Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Sue returns and we're going to keep talking about the book. We're into chapter 2 of Every Second Counts. So chapter 2, how can I serve more customers at peak? So conversation we have a lot, peak trading, the most important time for most organisations in the teams and your customers ultimately. So getting it right can make or break your business. Sue, I think this is one that's close to your heart, isn't it, in lots of conversations that you're having at the moment?
It is. And the thing about peak times, I mean, it's stating the obvious, but it's when most of your customers or potential customers are looking to buy whatever it is that you sell, whether that's products or services. So actually getting it right at peak is the fastest way to grow. And a lot of the studies that we do show that people are kind of slightly under-resourced at peak and they're probably capping the growth. It can be difficult to manage. I mean, if you take, for example, a lunchtime sandwich shop, for example, there's a lot of people that want it all at once, and flexing up your resource to match that can be tricky. But that is the challenge, because if you can't serve them quickly when they're looking for a sandwich, they'll go somewhere else and they might not come back to you again.
So the reverse of that, if you get it wrong at peak, you can clearly disappoint far more customers than you can. It's critical in terms of driving sales, but if you get it wrong, you can quickly lose sales, I assume, and customers.
Yes. So kind of getting it right and growing is when you get long queues. And, we have studied queues and we see people dropping off the end of queues, kind of not going ahead. And there's lots of technology and things that can help you these days as well. But ultimately, where people are trying to buy something that's either meal specific or another time specific, you get peaks across business. For a lot of businesses, Easter's a busy time, Christmas for people selling gifts, really understanding when your peak is. And if you look at some of the shops, I think things have changed because of the patterns of work have changed, but commuter businesses typically would have 3 peaks. They'd have the morning rush, lunchtime, and then the evening rush. So, it's about understanding when your peak is and what you can do to improve your capacity.
Different by industry, different by location. So even within the same industry or the same chain, I always use Westfield Stratford as the example. Their peak is probably 5 till 10 in the evening. Clearly busier Saturdays and Sundays, but if you get it wrong in that evening piece, you've lost your opportunity. So probably understanding when your peak is, maybe even at a local level, is a good start point. Clearly we've talked before around understanding how long things take and the times and all the associated bits that go with it. And then I assume it's about serving more customers at peak. So how do you get more people through in that time slot?
Yeah, which can be a mix of things. So it's one of those things that if you're in a coffee shop and you're going for volume or any fast food, anything that you can do that will shave a few seconds off that process for each customer will make a big difference. And that's where if you look at things like customer self-ordering or customer self-pay, again, makes a huge difference because you're increasing that capacity. So, when you've got these definite time windows where people are looking for something, how can you serve more customers in that time? So it isn't all about throwing extra people at it, because sometimes physically there isn't the space to do that. It's about how can you plan ahead, make sure you're not doing other work at that time, make sure you haven't got your breaks at the wrong times. There's some really simple, practical things that we see, are easy to get wrong. Yeah.
And you've got case study in chapter 2 around what others have done. So a series of small changes can create a big difference. We'll leave that to people to read in the book. But quick wins. So I know, again, this book was all about being operational and making tangible things that people can go after and do, rather than it being all theory. So just working through a couple of them then. So what extra movements do the team make?
So that's when you look at, it's down to this thing about shaving seconds off processes. So anything extra the team has to do reduces capacity. So we see it a lot in places like fast food or coffee shops where people are having to move to get things. The ideal is you stand in one place and everything you've got is in an easy reach. If you're having to take a couple of steps and perhaps cross over with somebody and then reach to a top shelf, that's going to take you longer. So what you're looking to do for these peak times is get rid of any extra movement that you can, because one, it's less tiring for your team, but secondly, it means you can process people faster and your sales will be higher.
Got it. And then interruption to smooth flow of process?
That's kind of standing back and watching. When I love seeing a place that's running really well, and it can look almost like, it's choreographed the way people work with each other and pass work between them or hand things off. Equally, you'll see places where people are working together where they're busy, and it's kind of people are making lots of stop-start movements, almost bumping into each other or having to avoid each other, or a bit of wandering aimlessly. And it's really different when you just stand back and look at it versus a slick, well-oiled machine.
What I still find amazing to some degrees, process steps that require supervisors' authorisation are always worth a look at. I'm amazed that some of that still takes place, given the level of accountability that seems to have come down the hierarchy over the last, probably since lockdown.
I think it's a cultural thing. So some businesses are really good at kind of allowing customer-facing colleagues to make those sorts of decisions. Others still insist on, you have to call a supervisor for a refund, or they might have it set at a level, but it's a level that means they're still triggering lots of requests for a supervisor intervention. One retailer that we looked at that called supervisors to quite a significant proportion of their refunds, it was adding on over a minute because, the supervisors aren't always standing there just waiting in case somebody asks them to sign off a refund.
Trying to get jobs done during busy times, so stock, for example. So I think that's about moving things, what we call on the shoulders of the peak. So trying to flatten that demand curve so you don't need to yo-yo your staff numbers up and down. Why would you be replenishing stock at peak, cages on the floor? Why would you be ordering stock, counting stock at peak when actually there's people queuing at the checkouts, or you're missing valuable conversations to upsell?
And it seems such a basic thing. Yeah, I bet we've all stood in queues when there's somebody that's doing some other task when they could have been speeding your journey on.
In a world where we've probably taken out checkouts in lots of the bigger chains, it was always frustrating when you had a bank of 20 checkouts and there'd be people milling around, but there'd be queues at the checkouts and only 10 manned. It's probably less visible now because there's less manned checkouts, but nevertheless, whenever there's queues and people not serving on the till, always irritant.
And it's not just in retail. I mean, you see that hotel check-ins are classic. There's often people around and yet not, there can be a queue of people waiting to check in and yet...
Yeah. It's a question for anybody listening, if you know the answer, because again, a massive bugbear of mine. If you check into a hotel, what is it that they're doing on the keyboard, which tends to take 2 to 10 minutes when you say you've arrived? Because you've probably paid, they know who you are, they know how long you're staying. Maybe they have to take a deposit, but surely they need to just allocate your room number and they've done it, yet they seem to move from screen to screen, typing away. It's baffled me forever of what actually they're doing. Anyway.
Why can't rooms be pre-allocated?
Yeah, so if you know the answer, let me know. Training, so actually are people trained efficiently, or actually have you just indoctrinated the training from the local store? So Betty, Beryl, John, Paul, that's the way they do it, so that's the way they train it in, which may not be the correct way, 2, the compliant way, or 3, the most efficient way. So are you perpetuating kind of poor process compliance just by the fact that people get trained locally by people that have done it for years?
It's interesting. A lot of the tasks that we will watch will be ones that people wouldn't necessarily think of a high-skilled job. If you say a high-skilled task, they might think about a surgeon doing operations.
I'd say making a cup of coffee is a highly skilled task.
Making a cup of coffee is a highly skilled task. So is things like assembling a burger at high speed. And it takes people a while to really get in a rhythm. So there's best ways to do it, but as they spend longer in that role and just get faster and slicker at things, it makes a big difference. So training can be that thing that really helps accelerate their progress.
It's an admix painting, DIY and cut timber. So I know highly skilled when we get there. Final one, who is running the operation at peak? So I was with somebody last week before even, and incredibly, their busiest periods are Saturdays and Sundays and Friday evenings, and most of their field team don't work Saturdays and Sundays, and most of the managers don't work Fridays.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be there when your business is at its best, and kind of not everybody wants to work every Saturday and every Sunday that comes along, but actually there has to be that right level of leadership in those situations to get the most out of it.
Yeah, and feel people dropping in. So again, we're not saying everybody has to work every weekend or evening, but as a view of how you're operating and what your customers are seeing, very different on a wet Wednesday afternoon than a busy Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday. So to really understand that and drive performance, only fair to see it. So that's chapter 2. We will be back with chapter 3,
which is about how to save costs.
It is. So
sometimes
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, even Siri doesn't understand, so that's good timing. We'll be back with chapter 3 to tell you more about it.
Good.